Welcome into Mississippi State Live here in the voice of college football. Andrew Miller here on a Thursday night call-in show edition of Mississippi State Live. So it is your opportunity. If you want to come be a part of the action, join the stream. You have that opportunity to do so. And come talk about the Bulldogs. Definitely want to get into that. Chance for you guys to sort of drive the discussion, drive the topics on the show. But should be a fun show tonight. We're going to get into which freshman Bulldogs we're most eager to see in spring practices. We've been doing kind of these spring previews leading up with some position previews. We talked about quarterbacks. I guess that was back last week. Earlier this week, talked about the running back position. Going to get into wide receivers next week and kind of keep that going throughout the spring. But across the board, who are some of the freshmen that have already enrolled? We're going to see them this spring, barring injury. Who are the guys we're most excited to watch? So going to get into a little bit of that. Talk a little Brennan Thompson at the Combine. Not a lot of news on that yet. I guess more just sort of mentioning it more than anything else. And anything else that you guys want to get into? I'll say off the bat, I've been coughing a bit today. Dealt with a sore throat the past few days. I got a cough drop in. I'm on meds. Hopefully I'll be able to get through the stream. We'll see how it goes. But if I have to mute or if I forget to mute and you hear me coughing and hacking up a lung, well, my apologies ahead of time. But for those of you who are tuning in, if you could leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and have the notifications turned on so you do know when we do go live. And, of course, tell all the Mississippi State friends and family you have in your life about what we're doing here at Mississippi State Live on the voice of college football. Bring them to the channel. Let's continue to grow this thing. And as I said off the jump, it is a call-in show tonight. If you guys want to come be a part of the action, talk about whatever, you're more than welcome to do so. We have a link pinned to the top of the live chat. We also have a link if I can show that, okay, link pinned to the top of live chat. I don't know why I never ever show that. That doesn't make a lot of sense that I don't show that. Also down in the description of the video as well. Just click the link, keep the cameras turned off. We'll bring you on stage and we'll talk about whatever it is you guys want to get into. You want to talk Bulldog football and go with, we're talking about, like I said, some of the freshmen. If you got a freshman you really wanted to talk about, by all means, come do it. If you want to get into another topic, some Bulldog basketball. Tell me how big of an idiot I am based on my take the other day that I got dunked on for, which is fine. That's fair. We can talk about that as well. I'm willing to get into whatever you guys want to on tonight's show. I will say off the jump, little promo, I guess, here. You can catch Mississippi State Live on your favorite audio platforms. Now, bit of a disclaimer on this. It's kind of a lie because right now, for whatever reason, and I guess it's been the case for a while, we don't show up on Apple Podcast, and I don't fully understand why. I do know we're up on Spotify. I don't check other streams, and I'm also not the one who handles this. So I just actually checked in with the guy who does go post everything to our audio platforms as to why we've not been getting anything on Apple. I'm weird. I use Spotify for music, but Apple for like 90% of my podcast. Like the only podcast I listen to on Apple is or on Spotify is just one that I happened to listen to on Spotify previously. So I still mostly use Apple Podcasts for podcast listening. So if that's what your preferential streaming platform is, hopefully we get that figured out. But look, you don't just have to go to YouTube if you want to listen to the show. Obviously, we love to have you guys in here. Driving up the YouTube numbers is fantastic. And getting a live interaction throughout, getting your YouTube comments, all that great. But if you ever miss the stream and you want to go back and listen, I know it's not always easy to pull up the YouTube and have that playing. Not everybody pays for like the YouTube Premium or I guess does YouTube have their streaming platform as well where you can do that? I get not everybody does that. You would like to just be able to listen to it. I know we're on Spotify for sure. Hopefully we get Apple figured out soon and could be on some other streaming platforms as well. I'm going to have to check on that. But is an opportunity. If you missed the show, you're not able to be here for the live stream, you can go check us out on those audio platforms. All right. Again, like I said, if anytime anybody wants to join in the stream, you're more than welcome to. But we'll get into the thing that we're going to talk about here tonight, which, of course, the freshmen that we're looking for from this Bulldog team that, who are we most excited to see in the spring? Who had an opportunity to stand out? Take a little sip of water there. So I went with 5 names that stand out, and they're kind of obvious names, right? The attention is going to be drawn to the guys at the top of the class because those are the guys that you would assume are you're most likely to make an instant impact on the roster. But these are the names that I think stand out the most. as the freshman that we want to watch here going into spring practices. And I know we're a few weeks away from spring practices officially beginning here at Mississippi State. But once that happens, who are we hoping to see stand out? Once the spring game comes along, who are we hoping to see stand out, have a big performance? And you got to start with the top dog in the class, that being Braylon Womack. Obviously, I guess officially ended as a 4-star signee, which I know he dealt with some injury stuff, and I'm sure there's justifications for the rating dropping, but that's very Mississippi State on brand that officially he ends as a 4-star prospect, even though he was a 5-star when he signed with the Bulldogs out of Brandon, Hartfield Academy. But, I mean, one of the top signees State has had in several years, and a guy who is a big-time talent at a position where the State's obviously had some great safeties over the years, but the type of guy you think has the opportunity to step in and contribute right away. We've talked about this a lot with Mississippi State's safety room. That this is kind of perfect timing for Braylon Womack to be able to step in and have an opportunity to play a big role right away, because you're losing so many guys out of that safety room. So many of your top players in that group you run out of eligibility. You had a very veteran group there, and then you lost more guys to the transfer portal as well. Guys who I don't know how much they really would have played, but you still took some losses there. So, I mean, look, Jerron Manning obviously was a big-time player for you this past season. Brian Lanier, who I thought had a solid season. Hunter Washington, opinions on him be what they are, a guy who played a lot for you at that spot. And then, look, Tony Mitchell played quite a bit for State at safety as well. And obviously he transfers out. So of your top 5 safeties from a season ago, Isaac Smith is the only one returning. Now, if you're only going to have one guy returning, that's a pretty dang good one to have back. Isaac Smith been such a good player for State and someone that I'm really excited to see him as a senior within the Zach Arnett defense. I think he's going to have a really big year. But there's open opportunities. And obviously State hit the portal hard, right? You bring in Jordan Gilbert, Kendall Dolby, Marcus Williams. Those are all guys who you expect to be sort of your leaders alongside Isaac Smith at the position. But Womack's got the talent to be a guy that plays right away. He's got the talent to be a guy that can potentially end up taking a starting job from any one of those guys. Someone that has been talked a lot about, mostly played sort of as a middle of the field player at Hartfield Academy, but can be used in a variety of roles. You could get him involved more as a box safety, get him down as a tackler. You can play him as a true nickel and put him in more one-on-one coverage type situations and develop him as a nickel corner. Has the athleticism to do that. Played wide receiver and was a very effective receiver at the high school level. A good return man, at least when it comes to interception returns, was able to make big plays off of that, which that's kind of where, if you're talking about, the middle of the field safety, a guy who's going to have those opportunities, go up and get the ball and make a play. Womack is a special talent and someone that, again, has the opportunity because of out of necessity to play a big role right away. So you want to see what that looks like when he comes into the spring. Is he able to step in as a true freshman and make it clear, oh yeah, this is one of the top dogs in the room? I think that would be a big thing for State early on. If you have a true freshman step in that secondary and a showing in the spring, I mean, this guy's going to be hard to keep off the field. That's a lot of reason for excitement. So Braylon Womack, easily the top guy in the spring that State wants to be able to see. I'll stay on the defensive side of the ball, and I mean, it's got to be Micah Nickerson, right? This Sam linebacker. State's got him listed as a Jack right now on the roster. Zach Arnett does not use Jack. They call it a Sam. Out of South Pike, obviously one of the big recruiting wins for State in the class. None is bigger than Womack, right? That you're able to win that battle, get the flip from Auburn, hold off Texas A&M's pursuit. But with Nickerson, that to have been a guy that you kind of, I don't want to say discovered him because he had some offers, but you had the commitment from him, and it felt like, hey, man, this guy's really under the radar. Flips to Missouri, and then right before signing day, you get him back in the class, and you worked to make that happen. And I know there's been talk that, hey, man, State had to step up NIL-wise, and they made sure they did what they had to go get him. And, I know I just rolled my eyes at Braylon Womack as this guy was advertised as a 5-star. He signed with State, now he's a 4-star. we have to give credit where it goes the other way. Micah Nickerson, when it was all said and done, Rivals had him as a top 50 player in the country, as a big-time signee, high 4-star for the Bulldogs. And this is a guy who is just a super athletic, explosive pass rusher off the edge, something Mississippi State has desperately needed and has lacked significantly over these past few years. State's not had a big-time edge rusher since probably 2022. Tyra Sweet was a really good player in that role. Since then, you've not had anybody step up across multiple defenses, defensive coordinators, guys who you thought could step into the role. It hasn't happened. Last year, I would say that Malik Silla showed flashes and had moments where you saw a little bit of that, but you never got it consistently out of him. I think he only finished with like 1.5 sacks on the season when it was all said and done, despite being able to get some pressure throughout the year. You need guys who can be those pass rushers. That's been part of the problem for State secondary at times, is you just can't get pressure on the quarterback consistently. Nickerson is a guy that's got that type of a skill set, and a guy that you think has the opportunity to step in and be a big-time player and get after the QB. And even if you're purely talking about him as a third down pass rush specialist, that's someone who could make an impact as a true freshman. And similar to what we're talking about with Womack in terms of early opportunities, there's an early opportunity at State because of positional need. We hit on this a lot that and Trey Clark asked him, is he an early enrollee? Yes. I believe he's here for the spring. I believe he actually was a part of bowl practices, if I remember correctly. But he is on the roster for the spring. I mean, all the guys we're going to hit on the roster for the spring. There's like a couple other names I probably would have gotten into, but they're not going to get here till the summer. So these are all guys that should be good to go throughout spring practices. But we talked about that edge position. State only went out and brought one guy in Amari Williams, who clearly Zach Arnett thinks very highly of. They think he's a special player. We got to steal there. That's a great get for us. Obviously, though, that's a risk. You don't know what you're getting there. A guy who has not done it yet to this point. And I guess, Nickerson has not done it either because he's not been in college. But the talent profile is there of a guy who could be a really big-time player and have the opportunity to contribute right away, because even if Amari Williams ends up being a good player for State, that's the thing. You can't just have one guy. You got to be able to rotate bodies. Let's say State hits on Amari Williams. He's an outstanding pass rusher. What else do they have at that spot? Tyshawn Willis kind of had a little bit of this billing coming last year, not to the same extent as Nickerson when it was all said and done. Willis didn't play as a true freshman. A guy that had to take a year. And I'm wondering, this is not reporting, I'm wondering if there was an injury thing with him, because didn't even appear in any games, whereas typically if you're a redshirt, these days you're at least going to get in 4 games. I think in the bowl game, like he was may have been there, but may have just not been dressed out. I don't know for sure, but usually you would have at least seen some snaps, and you didn't get that out of him. Not going to write him off or anything, but we haven't seen it yet. Outside of that, where else do you go on the roster? You really don't. I think LaKendrick James is a guy that's kind of got the frame that it might make sense. I know there's been talk about guys like Darian Gillette maybe making that move. You just don't have anybody proven at that spot. So even if you hit on Amari Williams, who's backing him up? Who's in that rotation? Nickerson has that opportunity. Now, the big talk with him is that he was very light coming out of high school, that he was listed around 215. I will say State's got him on the roster right now at 250. I wonder if someone misheard and they heard he's 250 as when somebody said he was 215. I don't know that. I have a hard time believing he's put on 35 pounds of weight between signing day and now, which, to be fair, the weight that he was listed at would have been, I guess, from his early season weight. So perhaps he was able to bulk up. Guys don't really put on weight during the season, but maybe it's feasible that the original weight was off base and he's been able to put on some more weight. And look, that's going to be the big thing to watch. And that'll be a huge thing to watch for in the spring. Obviously, they're not going through the summer workout period that a lot of these guys are going to go into, where you're really seeing the bulking. But by being on campus, he's getting into a college weight room and getting those opportunities to bulk up and get bigger and stronger. So what does he look like when we see him in the spring? Does he look like a guy that's 215 pounds out there, or does he have some mass behind him and you trust putting him on the field. And to be perfectly clear, even if he ends up, I would imagine he's going to put on 5 to 10 pounds of weight at a minimum. He probably puts on more. Even if we're talking about a guy that's under 230, David Bailey for Texas Tech was one of the top pass rushers in the country. And I believe at the Senior Bowl, he weighed in at like 220-something pounds. If I'm off on that, I apologize. I guess David Bailey would have been today as we're recording, would have gotten his measurements at the combine. So I'm curious what he weighed in at the combine from a weight standpoint. I know he ran a 4.51. That's great. Do they not have his? He's at 251. So yeah, he's put on some weight. Because I believe at the combine, the Senior Bowl rather, they were saying he was pretty light. Regardless, you can also go back to freshman year Harold Perkins at LSU, where Harold Perkins was around 220-ish, 215, 220-ish, and was a terror rushing off the edge. Now, that was solely the role he was used in. They couldn't really play Harold in any other spots. And you can't, on a down-by-down basis, have a guy like that on the field. That's been the Harold Perkins conundrum at LSU. I think I've explained it a few times on the show. A lot of it's like, how on earth did Brian Kelly waste that guy? I think that's the fan base narrative, or college, like just sports fan narrative. When part of it is he wanted to play off-ball linebacker. He wanted to be a true linebacker and not an edge. That's part of it. But even if they had put him at edge, having a guy who's setting the edge at 220 pounds consistently down after down is a problem, because teams are just going to run at you. And that was the issue for Harold Perkins did have as a freshman that kind of got overlooked, is teams would run at him and he didn't handle it well. You got to be able to set the edge, which is another issue State has had at that spot. You can't be a down-by-down player if you can't do that. But as a true freshman, as a rotational guy, can you come in on third and passing down? Yeah, you can. Where it's your role, pin your ear back, get the quarterback. Sometimes that's all you got to do. I remember a few years back, a guy that, I don't ultimately know how things turned out with his career, but remember Don Terry Russell for State, Devontae's younger brother? Kind of a similar type frame, but just sort of long and lanky, but really athletic rushing off the edge, who got some opportunities that year where State put him in for a few snaps and told him, hey, man, just go get the quarterback. And he showed more potential in that than anybody else State had as an edge rusher. Now, did he ever get his weight up to a point where he could have been a down-by-down player? I don't know. And I obviously didn't even play in 2024, ends up transferring out of the program. Don't really know what happened there. But Nickerson is going to have an opportunity to contribute right away, because State needs guys who can get after a quarterback. I know I think the overall opinion probably needs a year to get his body right, and maybe that's the case, and maybe State isn't going to want to burn the red shirt. But look, man, if he shows some flashes in the spring that he's a guy that can create pressure, then he goes through summer and can bulk up more, I think it's going to be hard to keep him off the field. Over to the offensive side of the ball, this is the guy that I'm really most intrigued by. Zayon Cotton, the tight end out of Grenada. This is a guy that, again, I've talked about before. I think State's going to have, or he's going to have an opportunity to contribute early at State because of the need at the tight end position. You're losing Sadu, who was sort of your H-back type guy, a slot tight end, more of the receiving threat, not much of a blocker. But within this offense, that's fine. You can have guys like that and be perfectly successful in that way. That's the role that you are losing off the team, frankly, because you don't have anybody else stepping in who can obviously fill that. You do have Sam West coming back, who showed some flashes for you last season here and there, but that's kind of it. Obviously, Riley Williams comes in as a transfer who has had flashes throughout his career, but has not consistently shown it. You've lost a few guys to the portal, which I think it was kind of more working through the group there, maybe a little bit of processing on some of them. You have some other freshmen coming in, guys who are maybe more traditional tight ends, whereas Cotton is a guy who really played wide receiver in high school, was mostly used in that type of a role. But having a guy that's a big-bodied weapon to work over the middle of the field who can get involved here or there, I don't think is a bad thing. Now, just like I talked about with Nickerson, there's a case of getting the body right and, is he ready to be a true college defensive end? For Cotton, getting him right to the point that he's ready to step in and be a regular contributor in the passing game while also handling some of the blocking responsibilities. Because even though you don't need him to be a great blocker within this offense, it'd be ideal, but you don't need him. You don't need him to be able to go head up against the defensive end. It's more, can you block linebackers and safeties? That's really what you need him to be able to do. Some guys struggle to do that. And if that's the case, all right, well, we're just going to put another receiver on the field, right? Because what are you really adding for us if you can't even do that? How quickly can he get up to par on being able to do that? But I think he's going to have an opportunity because State needs guys to step up at tight end. And I think having a big weapon in that position can be really valuable. Lebby has had guys like that before. Brayden Willis at Oklahoma. Obviously, Sadu, I think the idea was to get there, and he just never fully materialized the way you would have liked. But he caught like 5 touchdowns this year, 4 or 5, and showed flashes when he did get those opportunities. Obviously, Kenny Yeboah at Ole Miss back a few years ago had some big games for the Rebels within this system. You can use the tight end and get those guys involved in the passing game quite a bit. Lebby does like to do that. Cotton is sort of the guy, can you mold him? So, again, what does he look like coming out of the spring? Has he gone and reshaped his body already? Is he showing that he is ready to step in and contribute in that way right away? Those are going to be the big things to watch with him. But if he has shown that, he's going to have a great opportunity to contribute. And it's someone I definitely want to see in the spring. How does it get used? Especially, look, if you can have, for a younger quarterback in Camario, if you can have a tight end that you can get involved in the passing game consistently, that helps you out a lot. So that's definitely a guy I want to watch. J.J. Hill at running back. And we talked a lot about him earlier in the week because the running back position is an area where, it's interesting for State because you've got the veteran leader that's your clear number one in Fluff Bothwell. But after Fluff, what else do you have at running back? You've got Xavier Gayden back. He has shown flashes, had the chance at a bigger role last year. Did play a bigger role, but didn't take advantage of those extra opportunities that he got last year. Doesn't mean he can't get better. Really, this position as a whole, as I talked about earlier in the week, it's a spot we want to watch closely because who's going to be that number 2? But that was kind of one of the points that I was getting at is there's a wide open opportunity. And really you could go 2 guys here. You could talk about Jaden or JJ or Cooper Crosby. Both freshmen coming in are going to have an opportunity because you have nothing proven behind Fluff. Gayden has not yet taken the reins as the clear number 2, clear counterpart. Colin Wilson, we just haven't seen him. Gotten a few reps, gotten a few carries. He's not gotten enough playing time to know what we have in that guy. Both these freshmen coming in as 2 very talented players for State, 2 guys that are high 3 stars, really could be 4-star players. I think maybe some services did have them as 4 stars. They're going to have the opportunity, and not to sell Cooper short, obviously a very explosive player with the ball in his hands, very fast player who, look, to be honest, if Gayden or Wilson don't take over as that true counterpart to Fluff, where Fluff is sort of the physical downhill type runner, if you're looking for a complimentary back, maybe Cooper is the guy that if he can come in and take advantage, he's going to get those reps. That said, J.J. Hill is sort of the guy that I think everybody's looked at like, man, when he gets to college, he's going to be able to make an impact. And another tough physical runner. Obviously, look, not the breakaway speed that maybe you want, but has more than enough speed to be explosive in the rushing game as well. But a guy who can also just, you hand him the ball off and he's just going to go make plays. He's going to continue to fight forward contact. And that's something that I think matters within this rushing game when we still have questions about the offensive line. That's where it kind of all comes together is State's O-line is not one where we can yet confidently say they're going to get it blocked up well up front on a down-by-down basis. I'm hoping they are. But we don't yet know that. We've had 2 years within this offense, 2 different O-line coaches. It's been the same problem. And frankly, they were worse at it this past year. At least 2 years ago, they got to a point where the run game was competent from a blocking standpoint. This year, not so much. Are the new faces they brought in going to be the guys that fix that? We'll see. That's the other big thing to watch in the spring is a major storyline, which is definitely something we'll get into at a later date. But if that group is not going to just be road graders up front, you can't not be able to run the football within this offense. This is an offense where if you get the looks to run, you need to be able to hand the football off and get effective, consistent yardage. And if you're not getting the blocks well up front, that means your running back better be a dude. I think Fluff at his best is a dude. J.J. Hill, based on what he did in high school, was a dude. Can he be that dude at the college level? And his skill set is a physical break tackle runner who can just sort of make some things happen. Gives him an opportunity within this group for sure. So definitely a guy that we want to see. But again, I don't want to sell Cooper Crosby short. I think that both of those guys at running back, you can really put them 1 and 2 or 1A, 1B. Shout out to Jeff Collins and the Psycho defense as guys that really it's equal opportunity, in my opinion, coming out. Last guy we'll talk about, I wanted to go to the receiver position because State's got an interesting group of receivers coming in that they signed. I like the class that they have at wide receiver. I think it's a really interesting group. But only one of those guys enrolling early. And Trey here with the question, is West a better blocker than Traore? I feel like yes. I tend to think so, and I've been trying to go back and watch more of this a little bit, but West early in the season, I know if you got him out in space, he was struggling with that. There were times that they would try to get him as a lead blocker on like a screen pass, and it didn't work out the way they wanted it to. But I will say, whenever they got into 2 tight end sets, West was the guy who they were having out there. And West was also the guy that they would most use attached to the line, get him down to a 3-point stance. Whichever guy you're comfortable doing that with as your tight end, that kind of tells you who's your best blocker. And Trey saying, I think he's more comfortable attached. Yeah, which, again, that's an opportunity going back to Zayon Cotton. If West can be your guy that is the attached line of scrimmage tight end and be your inline blocker, you can then have Cotton as your H-back type, which, frankly, look, that's probably what's going to be Cotton's going to be throughout his career. Guys like him, unless he just puts on a ton of weight and becomes just an incredible blocker, which some guys, look, they can develop that in college for sure. I feel like, though, a lot of the guys who end up being the best blocking tight ends, it's more like they were athletic offensive linemen, but, who just were not fully up to weight. But those two will have an opportunity to work alongside each other. It's just whether or not Cotton's ready for it. But, getting back to the receiver, some of those guys aren't coming in. Jaden Creation's not coming in. Zion Crumpton's not coming in until the summer, that is. And we've talked about receivers being a spot where, hey, there's opportunity. You know what you got in Ant Evans. You've got your top receiver back, big-time weapon out of the slot, fantastic. Marquise Johnson coming in as a big-time guy on the outside, deep threat, good pickup from Missouri as a transfer. That's one of your starters for sure. Outside of that, Aiden Williams is a returning starter. And I thought Aiden Williams, I do think he played consistently for State. I thought he did a good job of being physical as a receiver when the few opportunities he got. I thought he was the best blocker State had in that receiving core last year. Didn't make big plays. Was not a guy that they were targeting. Was not a guy that they were ready to get regularly involved. Frisco McGee is someone I think we're all very excited about because, we've seen the potential the last couple of years in like spring practices, right? Where, I know Chad Bumpus always talked really highly about him as, man, this guy's really special. And last year he makes the game-winning touchdown catch in the spring game. They're sharing highlights to the social media page of him making crazy grabs. And then he just doesn't get on the field. Gets involved in the spring game, catches a big touchdown. Guy does that, there's going to be a ton of hype. And I think Frisco definitely has the ability to go and be the guy, but he still has to show it. So there's opportunity at receiver. And even though Levy typically doesn't rotate that position a ton, there's opportunity for someone to step in. And you've got, like I've said, a very talented young group of guys in. And I think Creation and Crumpton are the 2 freshman receivers that have gotten the most discussion. I don't want to leave out Camden Capehart either, who might be Brennan Thompson 2.0, if we're being completely honest. But that's another guy that's not coming in until the summer. The guy who is coming in early is Keemian Henderson. out of Texas, another high 3-star that State landed, former Arkansas commitment, big frame, 6'4", 190. And a guy who has been best as a deep threat throughout his career. We've been talking, can State get that guy who's the big frame receiver, just the true prototypical, what you imagine when you think of an outside wide receiver? And, Aiden Williams could be that. Frisco McGee can be that as well. Keemian also brings that. And having that catch radius is a big thing. And, for me, it's just the fact that you got a freshman who's in the spring. You got opportunities at receiver. I'm really intrigued to see, can he make a statement early? Because those other guys haven't fully taken advantage yet. And we've seen Levy's willing to play young receivers, right? Obviously, Mario Craver became a starter for Mississippi State as a true freshman. So you get chances like that if you can step in and make an impact. Him coming in the spring does, I think, give him a leg up on those other guys that are stepping in. And there's a nice opportunity for Henderson there to be a really nice impact player. He's got the skill set. Again, a big play threat, big frame, got good enough speed. He could be a good guy for State. So big opportunity. I'm very curious to see what he can do at receiver. So, it ended up being a pretty good high school class, all things considered, for State. They closed really well. And you have a lot of these guys stepping in that I think are going to have opportunities to make an impact early. Definitely going to want to be keeping close tabs on these guys as we go throughout spring practices. Ooh. See, my voice is getting shot. I'm not going to be able to go much longer, to be completely honest with y'all. But hey, it's been a fun conversation. While we're at it, though, I do need to take a moment here to do a little bit of promoting, if I could. Make sure that's sharing my screen. Does that come up the way it needs to? Yes. Take it to the Voice of College Football store. And I need to have the link to this posted. So let me make sure I'm getting that in the chat. And there you go. So Voice of College Football, we have some great merch. That nice hat selection here. Got a trucker hat that's almost looks like it's a rope hat, actually. But we got shirts, and this one, hey, you can get it in maroon. You got a polo, sweatshirt, coffee mug, koozie, tumbler. So great merch over there at the Voice of College Football store. If you guys want to rep the VOCFB, I can't even say it right. I'm still figuring this thing out. Rep the Voice of College Football brand. Definitely go and check out the store. Got some cool merch over there for you guys. Hopefully we can get some more like maroon color in here so we can get some more Mississippi State stuff. But I definitely want to, if you guys want to rep the brand, that's where to go. All right. Let me get this. Is that right? Yes, it is. That's going to about do it. Do want to say, really excited to watch Brennan Thompson this weekend. He's going to run on Saturday. Media interviews tomorrow as we record. So want to hear what he has to say. I think he's got a chance to go and challenge for that 40 record. Probably going to come a little bit short, but I know it was the company that does like the tracking on 40 times said they project him anywhere from like a 4.19 through a 4.24. If he ran a 4.19, that's a record. I don't think he's going to run that fast. That'd be absurd. But I think he's going to be the top 40 runner. I think he's going to make him some more money. Really cool to see how this has gone for Brennan in the draft process, because I know there was a lot of talk about trying to get him back for another year, and that would have been cool if State could have had him on this offense for sure. And I'll be honest, I wondered some about his NFL prospects a little bit, just because, small guys, it's like, well, how's the NFL going to feel about it? But, man, you run a 4.2 and be a big play threat, like there's going to be a role for you in the NFL. And it sounds like there's been a lot of buzz around him for several weeks now, in really the past couple months since he's declared, and really excited to see what he does. Not just the 40. Can he really tear it up? And could he end up being a day 2 pick at receiver? I think there's the opportunity there. We're really excited for Brennan and for State to get a receiver in the NFL. And it feels like that's inevitable at this point. I guess, knock on wood, we'll figure that out for sure. But you haven't had a receiver drafted since 1996. So to know that you got a guy that you feel confident saying that he's going to go and that there's some discussion. I saw somebody had him as a top 50 prospect. I mean, if he really balls out this weekend, don't pull Chris Jones. Not that level of balls out at the combine. Don't want to do that. But if he goes and lights it up, could really even further boost that draft stock. So really excited to watch Britton, and we'll definitely talk about however he performs. We'll recap that here on the show. And definitely take a look at some of his draft prospects. I would love to be able to try to get somebody on to talk about how he projects to the next level, and where the best fits and when could he go in the draft. So in the coming months, definitely have a lot of that. You can probably hear my voice is about gone at this point, but we've gone 36 minutes. I feel good, and I was glad we were able to get into the main topic tonight, going back on the Freshmen Bulldogs. So yeah, that'll do it for me. I will be back Monday, planned for 7 p.m. Central Time. That's when we're trying to go on Mondays. 6 p.m. Central Time. Have I been doing 6 or the other time? I didn't want to say the thing. I don't know. I mostly do 6 o'clock on Mondays. Look, that's how out of the loop I am right now. Or just out of it mentally. 6 p.m. Central Times on Mondays, 7 p.m. Central Times on Thursdays. That's the general plan. We might move those times around a little bit, but we'll be back Monday. We'll start taking a look at the Bulldog receivers, and then any other news and notes that we have, we'll definitely get into that. And then, back with the call-in show 1 week from tonight. Appreciate everybody who tuned in. And for those of you in the chat, if you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel, have the notifications turned on so you do know when we do go live. And as always, swing your sword and hail state.